Everyone feared the millionaire CEO until the new cleaner arrived and did what no one has ever do. The janitor's cart squeaked as it rolled down the marble hallway of Blackstone Industries. But what nobody knew was that the woman pushing it held 3 Harvard degrees and had once been the youngest CEO in Fortune 500 history. Elena Rodriguez adjusted her cleaning uniform and took a deep breath as she approached the corner office where the most feared man in corporate America sat behind his mahogany desk, completely unaware that his life was about to change forever. Hey everyone, before we dive into this incredible story, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from around the world. If this story moves you like it moved me, hit that subscribe button because you won't want to miss what happens next. 3 months earlier, Elena had been living in a penthouse, commanding boardrooms and making decisions that affected thousands of employees. Today, she was invisible, just another service worker keeping the corporate machine running. But invisibility was exactly what she needed. Richard Blackstone III had built his empire through fear and ruthless business practices that left competitors crushed and employees terrified. At 52, he commanded respect through terror rather than admiration. His steel-gray eyes had made grown men weep during hostile takeovers, and his voice could silence an entire conference room with a single word. What people didn't know was the loneliness that consumed him every night, or how he hadn't spoken to his estranged daughter in over a decade. They didn't know about the panic attacks that struck him in the early hours of morning, or how he'd stopped believing that anyone could ever love him for anything other than his money. Elena had studied Richard for months before taking this job. She'd interviewed former employees who'd lost their homes after sudden layoffs and heard from whistleblowers who'd been legally destroyed for speaking out. But Eleanor had also seen something else in her research. In every photo from the past 5 years, Richard's eyes held a hollow emptiness that she recognized from her own darkest days. The first week was pure observation. Elena watched Richard through security cameras, studied his patterns, and listened to how he spoke to people when he thought nobody important was watching. To his assistant Sarah, a single mother of 2, he was dismissive and cold. When Sarah arrived 15 minutes late due to car trouble, Richard docked her entire day's pay without listening to her explanation. Elena watched Sarah cry silently in the bathroom afterward. To the maintenance crew, Richard was almost cruel. When elderly janitor Thomas accidentally bumped into him, Richard exploded in verbal abuse that left the 70-year-old man shaking. But Eleanor also noticed quieter moments. She saw him stare at a framed photo of a young girl on his desk, quickly turning it face down when someone entered. She observed him late at night, sitting motionless for hours, and she heard him make a phone call every Friday at 6:15, always hanging up without leaving a message. On her 10th day, Elena made her first move. Richard had stayed late again, hunched over financial reports with an untouched dinner on his desk. Elena knocked gently on the doorframe. Richard looked up, irritation flashing across his face. "What do you want? I'm busy." "I'm sorry to bother you, sir," Elena said softly. "I noticed you haven't eaten your dinner, and I was wondering if I could make you some coffee. My grandmother always said food tastes better with kindness." Richard stared at her, completely caught off guard. Nobody had offered him kindness without wanting something in return for longer than he could remember. "Coffee would be fine," he said quietly. Elena returned with perfect coffee and cookies she'd bought from her own pocket. "Thank you," Richard said, genuine surprise in his voice. "You're welcome, Mr. Blackstone. Have a good evening." As Elena turned to leave, Richard called out, "What's your name?" "Elena, sir, Elena Rodriguez." That night, for the first time in months, Richard ate his entire dinner, and for the first time in years, he slept through the night. Over the following weeks, evening conversations became routine. Elena would sit with Richard, sometimes talking, sometimes just keeping him company. She began bringing small touches of warmth to his sterile office, a plant, cookies from home, and eventually dinner to share. "You don't have to keep feeding me," Richard said one evening. "I know I don't have to," Elena replied. I want to. My mother always made extra food, because you never know who might need nourishment for their body or their soul. Elena, can I ask you something personal? You seem too intelligent, too articulate to be cleaning offices. What's your story? Elena had been waiting for this moment. I suppose we all have chapters in our lives we'd rather not discuss. Some of us are between chapters right now. Richard, he said softly. Please call me Richard. It was the first time in 15 years he'd asked an employee to use his first name. As their friendship deepened, Eleanor watched Richard change. He started saying good morning to security guards and learned their names. When Sarah's son got sick, Richard not only approved her early departure, but sent flowers to the hospital. One evening, Richard shared the story Elena had been waiting to hear. I have a daughter, he said quietly. Amanda. She's 28 now, and I haven't spoken to her in 11 years. What happened? I was so focused on building this empire that I forgot to build a relationship with her. When her mother died, Amanda was 17, and instead of being the father she needed, I threw myself deeper into work. The last time we spoke, she told me that I'd become everything she feared in a man. Elena reached across the desk and touched his hand. It's never too late to change the ending of a story, Richard. How can you be so sure? Because I've seen who you really are these past few weeks. The man who asks about my mother's health and remembers that Thomas's wife is having surgery, that man is capable of incredible love. That weekend, Richard drove to Amanda's apartment. After 3 hours in his car, he finally knocked on her door. Dad? What are you doing here? I came to apologize, Richard said simply. Not with words, but with actions. I came to ask if you'd teach me how to be the father you deserved. The conversation was painful, filled with years of hurt. But Amanda agreed to have dinner with him the following week because she could see something different in his eyes. Richard's transformation accelerated. He implemented new policies at Blackstone Industries, increasing employee benefits and creating mentorship programs. He began holding monthly meetings where employees could voice concerns without fear. The corporate world was baffled. Richard Blackstone, known for ruthless efficiency, was now famous for employee-first policies. Stock prices initially dipped, but employee productivity soared as innovative ideas flowed from departments previously stifled by fear. The crisis came on a Thursday evening in November. Elena arrived at Richard's office to find him staring at his computer screen, his face pale with shock. Elena, he said without looking up, can you explain this? On his screen was a Forbes article from 2 years ago featuring Elena Rodriguez, former CEO of Rodriguez Consulting, youngest woman to ever lead a Fortune 500 company. Richard, I can explain. Can you? Because what I'm reading says that Elena Rodriguez disappeared from the business world after her company was destroyed by hostile takeover tactics, remarkably similar to the ones I've used my entire career. Elena sank into the chair across from his desk. Yes, that's me. So this has all been what? Some kind of elaborate revenge scheme? The pain in Richard's voice cut through Elena like a blade. No, Richard, it wasn't like that. It started that way, but what? You felt sorry for the pathetic old man who was so desperate for connection that he'd confide in his janitor? Elena stood up, her emotions breaking through. It started as revenge, yes. I wanted to understand you, to find your weaknesses. I lost everything, Richard. My company, my employees' jobs, my life's work. I spent 6 months planning how to make you pay. And now you have. No. Elena's voice carried her natural authority now. You want to know what really happened? I came here to destroy you, yes, but then I met you, really met you, and I realized something that terrified me more than any hostile takeover ever could. Which was, I realized that the man who destroyed my company wasn't the real Richard Blackstone. He was a creation born from fear and loneliness. But the real Richard, the one I've spent these past months with, the one who worries about Thomas's wife and remembers my mother's birthday, that Richard is exactly the kind of leader I always hoped to become. Richard stared at her, confusion replacing anger. What are you saying? I'm saying that somewhere along the way, my mission changed. I stopped wanting to destroy you and started wanting to save you, not because I felt sorry for you, but because I recognized something in you that I'd lost in myself. Which was? The belief that we can change, that our past mistakes don't have to define our future, that redemption is possible if we're brave enough to face who we've been and work to become who we want to be. Richard was quiet for a long moment. Your company, Rodriguez Consulting. I remember that takeover. We absorbed your client base and eliminated your workforce. 300 people lost their jobs. 312, Elena corrected quietly. Why didn't you just sue me? Fight back through legal channels? I did, for 6 months. But you had better lawyers and deeper pockets. Eventually my own legal team advised me to settle and walk away. So you decided to take me down from the inside instead. Initially, yes. But Richard, look around you. Look at what you've built these past few months. The policies you've implemented. The lives you've changed. The relationship you're rebuilding with Amanda. Do you really think this is the work of someone trying to destroy you? Richard walked to his window, looking out at the city lights below. What do you want from me now, Elena? Now that I know who you really are? Elena joined him at the window. I want you to keep being the man you've become. I want you to remember that the power you have can be used to build people up instead of tearing them down. And I want you to forgive me for not being honest about who I was. Where does this leave us? I don't know. I know I can't keep working here under false pretenses, and I know you probably can't trust me anymore. Richard turned to face her, and Elena was surprised to see that his eyes were soft, not angry. Elena, can I ask you something? Anything. In all our conversations, when you talked about your values, your beliefs about leadership, and treating people with dignity, was any of that real? All of it, Elena replied without hesitation. And when you listened to me talk about my regrets, when you encouraged me to reach out to Amanda, when you brought me soup and sat with me during those long evenings, was any of that manipulation? None of it. Richard, I may have lied about my identity, but I never lied about caring about what happened to you. Richard nodded slowly. Then here's what I think we should do. Elena braced herself for the worst. I think, Richard continued, that Elena Rodriguez, former CEO and current cleaning lady, should consider applying for a position as Chief Operating Officer of Blackstone Industries. We have an opening, and I know someone who's proven herself to be exceptionally good at transforming corporate culture. Elena stared at him in shock. Richard, I can't, after everything I've done. Elena, you gave me back my daughter. You showed me what kind of leader I could be. You reminded me what it feels like to have someone believe in my capacity for good. Do you really think I'm going to let pride stand in the way of keeping that wisdom in my life? But the deception was born from pain that I caused. Elena, I destroyed your life's work. The fact that you ultimately chose to build something new instead of just tearing me down tells me everything I need to know about your character. 3 months later, Elena Rodriguez was officially announced as COO of Blackstone Industries. The business press had a field day with the story of the Millionaire CEO and the janitor who'd changed his life, though they never learned the full truth about Elena's background. Under Elena and Richard's joint leadership, Blackstone Industries became known as one of the most ethical and employee-friendly companies in the corporate world. They established industry-leading mental health benefits, created profit-sharing programs, and implemented environmental policies that made them a leader in sustainable business practices. Richard's relationship with Amanda flourished. She eventually joined the company as head of corporate social responsibility, working alongside Elena to ensure that Blackstone's business practices aligned with their stated values. The transformation wasn't without challenges. Some employees struggled to adapt to the new culture of collaboration. A few board members resigned when Richard refused to revert to the old profit-at-any-cost mentality. But the company's financial performance remained strong, and employee satisfaction scores reached record highs. One evening, almost a year after the truth had come out, Eleanor and Richard were working late in the office that had once been his fortress of solitude. "Do you ever regret it?" Richard asked suddenly. "Regret what?" "Not going through with your original plan. You could have ruined me, Elena." Elena considered the question seriously. "I used to think that justice meant making people pay for their mistakes, but I've learned that real justice might actually be giving people the opportunity to make amends for them, even when they don't deserve it. Especially then. Richard, the man who destroyed my company, was someone trapped by his own fears. The man sitting across from me now is someone who chose to break free from those limitations. Which version deserves my energy and attention?" Richard smiled, his face showing the peace that had replaced the hard edges of his earlier years. "Like coming home to myself after being lost for a very long time." The story of the feared CEO and the cleaner who changed his life became legendary in business schools and leadership development programs. But those who knew the real story understood that it wasn't about a dramatic transformation or a single moment of revelation. It was about the daily choice to see the humanity in others, even those who had wronged us. It was about the courage to extend grace when justice would be easier. And it was about the profound truth that we all have the power to write a different ending to our stories, no matter how dark the previous chapters might have been. If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Sometimes we all need a reminder that change is possible, that redemption is real, and that the most powerful force in the business world isn't fear or intimidation. It's the simple act of treating each other with dignity and respect. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove humanity's capacity for transformation. And I'll see you in the next one.